So No Rest for the Wicked is out in early access, and I've put about 50 hours into the game at this point and been having a blast. But since I have been farming the end game, it kind of occurred to me that there was a handful of things I did relatively early that may have made my playthrough a lot harder than it needed to be, and to some degree slowed down my overall progress as I transitioned into the end game. So in today's video, I'm going to be showing you quite a few things that I wish I knew early before diving into No Rest for the Wicked. These tips are not silly little things like basic mechanic, but a breakdown of things that could go over your head and possibly hurt your playthrough. With all that said, let's begin. What is up everybody? Welcome back to Fervor Gaming, where you can stay up to date on the latest in gaming. This includes news, builds, and guides just like you see in today's video. If you like the content you see here today and want to help the channel out, drop me a like to get this video out to other gaming fans, but if it wasn't for you, change it to a dislike. So the first tip we're going to talk about is stat distribution and just generally how characters are going to progress through No Rest for the Wicked in the current patch. The important thing to note is stats are permanent in the game and you cannot reset them on that individual character until the devs maybe add something in the future. That's basically how the game is right now. So this means that whenever you're allocating your stats, you need to be a little bit mindful of what you do. When I first dropped into the game, I found some dex-based daggers and started pumping dex a little bit. Luckily, I didn't overdo it, but I know some players may find a weapon that they like early and start pumping stats, but here's a better option for you. First off, I would probably pump stamina first. Stamina is going to be objectively the best stat in the game for you. It's going to give you the ability to roll, to attack, pretty much everything that you need to do in the game. So if you're not sure on what you want to actually build for, you may want to go with stamina. The other option would be a little bit of HP. HP is going to always be valuable because if you get hit, you're less likely to die because you have more health, and it's just a valuable stat altogether. Finally, I would put points into weight or like equipment load. This is going to be my third priority stat until I'm a little bit set on the build that I want to go with or the gear I want to go with. The final thing I do want to say about this though when it comes to stat distribution is one thing you need to understand about No Rest for the Wicked is the game is designed inherently for you to make multiple characters. That's just going to be the way that the game works until they add some type of way to respec your stat points. So it's kind of important that you understand that you may actually need to build multiple characters for multiple builds. So for my first tip, these are going to be the most important stats you should build into, and again, be prepared to possibly make multiple characters until something resets your stats or added to the game, if ever added to the game. The next thing we need to talk about is vendors within all of Sacrament, and this is going to be multiple parts for this. But the first thing you need to understand is there are multiple vendors tied behind quests within the game that you should definitely go for and pretty much get. The first one is going to be fairly easy because this is going to be around the main path. You're going to go into the keep, and then you're going to find Fillmore. This is going to be the blacksmith of Sacrament. He's going to basically tell you to go to Sacrament and then basically join you within the city. He's going to be your primary blacksmith. So this one's going to be fairly easy to find. For the next one, there is going to be the potion seller, and this one I make a proper video for you guys to kind of look at. I don't want to put this in the video as it's going to be about a 3.5 minute video breakdown. But in order to find this quest, this is going to be in the Orban Glades, about south from one of the teleport wisp areas, basically where you fought the Torn guy. And there's going to be a ladder that leads down into his area for you to basically do the quest. Down in the description, I will have a video for you to follow if you want to follow it, because again, it's a 4-minute video. It can be a little bit annoying to navigate through, but this is going to unlock the potion seller for you. For the other vendor, which is going to be a vendor that gives you the ability to buy cooked foods, is going to be in the Mariner's Keep. This is going to be another whisper that you find in the tower, but this is going to be another one that you need to do. It's a very simple quest. I think it takes about 3 minutes to do as well, but it's going to give you the access to a guy who basically cooks for you, so you can just buy the things that you need. Finally, if you want to unlock housing, there is going to be another quest line that you need to do. This is generally progression as well, so it's not something that you generally should miss, but it can be a little confusing to find. I also have a video on the channel on how to unlock housing. Again, this is a 5-minute guide and it is fairly long. I break it down to 5 minutes so you know what to do. But again, that will be down in the description. But you really do need to get these vendors because they're pretty helpful to progressing your game. Now, while we're on the subjects of unlocks, we need to talk about unlocking some very specific things in the town. And as you get into the town, you're going to be pretty much instructed to go to the Rookery. And the Rookery is going to give you access to a few things, but the most important thing is it's going to give you access to unlocking slots. This is going to require you to pretty much find Ichor to pretty much unlock this. The way I found Ichor was a combination of ways. First, it was to fight the elite Holy Knights, or the Void Knights I think they're called. These guys are relatively tough, but they can in theory drop these. I don't know if this is tied to every single elite in the game, but I know for a fact that the Void guys will drop this, so this is actually really important to possibly kill them when you see them, because they could give you these. As well as any of the major bosses, these guys will actually have a chance to drop them as well. They also have a chance to drop legendary weapons as well. This is the only place I found it was from bosses, so again, just be mindful that bosses can drop these weapons. I know you're thinking, well, how do I get these weapons if I already killed them? And this is actually going to be my next tip to help you, and that is whenever you're progressing through the game and you get to like the actual end game and you're done, you can actually go back and create a new realm and then send your character to that new realm. You'll keep all your stuff. You won't keep like the world progress stuff, but you'll keep all your stuff, and then you can go back and fight those bosses and possibly farm gear that could be useful for your character. This actually extends to Ichor as well, so this is another tip that's worthwhile in getting. Now, while we're on the subject of upgrading our character and upgrading gear, let's talk about just what you should purchase whenever you're within Sacrament and have the option to upgrade your pretty much Sacrament overall. So coming up to Danos, the first thing I would get is Lodging Staircase. This is going to be pretty much the best staircase or the best upgrade that you're going to need for you to pretty much get to the Rookery. You're going to need to get to the Rookery just in general because you need to, again, from our last tip, be able to get the Ichor. And the other thing is, like, there is within the Rookery like bunk area, there's like beds as well as a little chest that you can use to store your goods. It's quite a bit of things you can store in there. It is community, so just keep in mind people could in theory come take it once like multiplayer is live. But this is a great way for you to have some storage, because for a very long time until you unlock the housing, like I told you in the previous tip, you're not going to really have a lot of space to like store things, and this is going to be your primary storage. Beyond that, I really wouldn't go for the scaffolding or anything like that unless I have like really nothing else to do with my resources, because like you're going to pretty much go from that to your house, and that's where I would put all my stuff in there, because housing isn't that crazy to get, and I don't think you want to lean too heavy on the Rookery in my opinion. After that, personally, I would get Eleanor's enchantment shop. This is pretty cheap as well. It's just 10 pine and 5 copper, I believe. This is going to give you a wider variety of gems for sale as well as enchantments. This is going to be really good for upgrading your gear, making it more efficient, because in the end game, you're going to rely on like cursed gear as well as like rare gear. You're not really going to lean too heavy into like the legendary stuff. Most of the legendary stuff, which we're going to cover in a second, really have really good like runes that you want to extract. And in the end game, in the grand scheme of things, you're going to want to craft your own weapon to be more tailored to what you need, because again, the like legendaries have pre-existing stats on them that are not necessarily always good for your build. Beyond that, there's really nothing else I care about in this. You can get the shops, you can get the inns. Again, I don't really care for anything else because the rest is pretty self-sufficient or can be like kind of made into your home. But for me, those two are the best to get early on, and then proceed from there wherever you want to do. So for my next tip, this is going to be crafting related, and this is going to be a couple of crafting tips. The first thing we need to talk about is runes and what you should be doing with gear. So early on, you're going to find a lot of like rare and epic gear that you may or may not want to use for a build, and you don't want to necessarily save since you don't have a lot of room. So instead of just going to sell it, because I know silver is going to be very important to you, the thing I would do personally is come to Eleanor. You can find Eleanor north of Fillmore within the I think this is basically a crafting zone or a vendor zone, and she's going to give you the ability to craft runes or add runes to gear and or take it away. So as you can see from like the footage I'm doing now, is I took something out of one of the hammers that was a really cool spell that I liked that I could use in another two-hand, and then I extracted it. And you want to do this pretty much for every single like rune that you don't have access to. And I would even argue making multiple copies so you can have it and just have a box in your house with like runes purely. And I would just extract quite a few of them just so that I can get those runes, because again, you can add it to other weapons whenever you really start crafting your gear out. This actually extends to legendary gear as well, because there are going to be legendary gear when you finally get some. It's going to have good stats, but it's not going to be like the best statted things, because again, it's a little bit broad and they're more specific and handcrafted. And if you want to like build something more specific to your build, usually taking those runes out of those legendaries that I don't see in anything else, or I haven't seen so far in anything else, is more important. So you may want to like take them out. Just keep in mind this process will destroy the legendary, but again, they're gonna have predetermined stats, so it's easy to like find them again and then keep getting the runes that you want. So yeah, definitely this is gonna be my first tip. So while we're over here talking to Eleanor, let's talk about a few other things, and let's talk about these gems and stuff like that. And one thing you'll notice about these like ship amethyst and ship ruby, stuff like that, is they have a pretty high base value, but don't be fooled. That's like a bait. That's like a bait to get noobs to basically sell them. I think. I mean, I guess they have higher base value because they sell for higher base value from the vendor, but I would very much like hold off from selling those. I know money can be a little hard early on, but I would just save those, because if you ever played a game like Diablo, Diablo 4, Diablo 3, then you should be fairly familiar with the gem system, and this is functionally about the same in this game. But the main thing to understand is, for players who are not familiar with that genre but is playing this, is that whenever you slot these into gear, they're going to offer you stats. I think that's pretty self-explanatory, they say that, but it will offer you different like benefits. As you can see on screen now, I think I did something with a shield or something, and you notice that the armor shard is giving me 2 different things based on the weapon or the gear that I'm putting it into. That's another tip I want to talk about, is whenever you're slotting in different type of like chip rubies and things like that, those things are different based on the piece of armor that you're slotting it into. So for example, in my example, I used it on the shield and it gave it raw armor increase or percent armor increase. And then when I slotted it into I think a weapon, it gave it like some type of reduction on durability or something, like better durability or something like that. Anyway, the most important thing to understand is when it comes to like these chip rubies and all these different shards, is you don't want to just sell them, because you're going to need them to like really tailor your gear. Because like what the end game is, and I guess this technically could be another tip, but what end game is, it's just basically farming for gear and then like kind of setting up your gear to fit your build. So I would have like maybe like 5 boxes for pretty much every piece of gear that I would use: my weapon, my armor, my, you know, every piece, because you're going to, in my opinion, look for a lot of the base white gear, and then you're going to want to enchant it with the enchanter and hopefully get the stats that you want. So you want to like store that in your base once you get to higher tiers, and which we're going to talk about in a second. But yeah, this is like in-game focus, and you're gonna really want to like save up for this. So don't just throw away your ship gems, because they do have a really high base value, and that kind of baits you into selling them. Oh, and before we move on to talking about that, I do want to talk about tools very quickly. One thing I've noticed a lot of players do that's like not correct, or at least can help you like be a little bit more efficient, is like whenever you're mining and doing different things in the world to farm these chip gems and different things you need to farm to upgrade your base and stuff, is players will keep hitting that node until their tools break. And that's a mistake, because like your tools breaking like means they break, like they're gone, you can't use them again. And one thing is going to happen is eventually you're going to start getting better tools, tier 2, tier 3 tools, and you're going to want to preserve those as long as possible. And what you need to do is, before they break, is to stop using them and go repair them, because if you bring them to a repair shop, they will fully restore the durability to where they don't break. This may be a little bit obvious to some, but for some it's not. Do not like keep hitting things with your tools, because you will break them. The more basic ones, it kind of doesn't matter, because those are like easily bought from the shop. But once you get to tier 2 and tier 3 tools, kind of stop like hitting, and then like put those and swap them out for different things. I like to keep a second set of tools inside my inventory. Since you got the Ichors to like unlock it, it should be pretty easy to unlock. So I would like do that as well. And just keep a little set so you don't like break all your tools, because that's going to set you back for like farming, because there's a lot of farming required in this game. Alright, now we have another tip I wanted to talk about, and that is, these two are kind of interchangeable to some degree, and that is for our tiers. We just talked about how different tools have different tiers, and one thing I've observed is the world changes as you do things within the world. So for example, when you kill like some of the major bosses, I don't want to spoil them, but when you kill some of the major bosses, the world itself changes and things get tougher and they get stronger. And that's not necessarily specific to your level from what I can tell, because whenever I have a new world and I like walk around, it doesn't scale with my level, it scales with the world and what I do within that world. So one thing that is really important to note is, as you progress the world, you know, things are going to change, different monsters are going to start to spawn, but this actually goes for loot as well. And loot is going to have a tier system. You'll notice like at the top right, there's like a 1, a 2, and a 3. And these represent the different tiers of the individual weapon or the gear. And these tiers are gonna basically scale. The higher the tier, the better stats it's gonna have. So ideally you're aiming for tier 3. That is the current highest like tier we have right now in the current patch. So it's best to get that. And from what I can tell, around level like 21-ish is where you should see like tier 3. I think around like level 18 to 21 is when I started notice tier 3 gear dropping a little bit more in the world. So just know that when if you're looking for like tier 3 or the best tier item to craft on, that's going to be tier 3. You should expect to see that around 18 to 21. Anyways, that's all the things I wish I knew at the start of my playthrough of No Rest for the Wicked. I find these tips to be a bit more on the more important side of things to note, because these pretty much explain to you what you need to know to be the most effective without just telling you like the more basic stuff. To that end, if this video did help you guys out, do consider leaving me a like, as well as possibly subscribing to the channel for more No Rest for the Wicked, as well as other ARPGs and Souls-like, because I cover pretty much all of them. Don't forget to check out all my guides down in the description for you, so you know exactly what you need to do to unlock those vendors we talk about. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one very soon.